If you've had chronic back pain or any chronic pain that has persisted over years and you're looking for new ideas or techniques to overcome that, I'm going to share my story with you about how I overcame my chronic back pain that went on for 15 years with the help of a few things: visualization, self-love, and Kermit the Frog. Welcome, beautiful ones. This is Joy Dialogues. I am Marlo Mackenzie. This is 42 Days of Joy. And this is a storytelling series where I share stories from my life with the intention that they will empower you. Kermit the Frog, self-love, chronic pain, how does that all come together? I'll take you back in time to where my chronic pain started, and that was when I was a teenager. I was very active in sports. I was a pitcher in softball, and I was just pitching and pitching and pitching, and at the same time I was growing, and what happened was the muscles pulled the spine apart. I had fractures along my spine all the way from the top to the lower part of the spine, and this was painful. And like in other cases, when you break a bone, you put it in a cast. Well, they put me in a back brace. It was kind of like Spanx, except that it was plastic, and it was very uncomfortable. Before the injury, I just thought that I would live forever and I would always be healthy, and I was bionic and I could regrow limbs. I really did. Like, I think a part of me thought that. And the injury was like this shock. I was in the back brace for about 6 months, but to me at the time it felt like years. 6 or 7 months is years in teenager perception. After my fractures were healed, I kind of started a narrative inside of my mind which I wasn't aware of, which was a narrative of worry about my back. So after the injury, I did feel weather in my back. I felt cold and rain. Like when it was cold, I'd have pain, or if it was rainy, I'd feel pain in my bones. And it seemed like I'd constantly throw out my back. So over the years, I just started to worry about my back. Fast forward, it's like 15 years later, and I had just moved from Australia to the US to return home. It was a big transition. I had this job interview that I needed to go to, and just before the interview, my back went out, and it was a really big one. And I was like, I can't miss this job interview. I have a feeling about this job. And I just, like, I filled up with so much anger. I was just like, no more. I can't, I'm not having this anymore. That's it, never again. And it was like the anger was so all-consuming, and it almost felt like some like anger plus this decree of never again was this magical spell that went out into the universe. And it was like, okay, wish granted. But in order for the wish to be granted, there were some things that had to happen. One of the first steps that I took was inspired by my reading at the time and my viewing. I had just watched The Secret, and that kind of led to Eckhart Tolle. And so I was reading Eckhart Tolle's books, A New Earth and A Power of Now. And one of the big things that Eckhart Tolle talks about is to examine your thoughts. And I had not really done that very much before I read his books. And so I started just examining my thoughts. And like I was mentioning earlier, one of the first things I noticed was, and I could think back through time, I've had this constant worry about my back. And so I need to change this narrative and I could see that. And so how do you change the narrative? I thought about visualization techniques and exercises that they teach you when you play sports. My dad was a coach, and he would constantly be saying, envision the ball going through the hoop, envision the ball going over the net, envision your body being strong, envision winning, envision the plays that you're going to go through, see yourself doing the game before the game. So it just transferred. That really worked when I did that in sports. So I need to do that for my body. I'm going to envision my body being strong, envision my back being strong. And you can do this in so many ways. And I did just kind of go to town with it a little bit. I'd see myself running, I'd see myself jumping, I'd see beams of light coming up through my body. And so that's a very strengthening thing to imagine. And I check in on that as often as I can, or as often as I need to. It's a regular habit. And that was the first time I started that. And in terms of visualization, I also remembered that when I was a child, I had used visualization just naturally. And I think there's something about children, they're just, so much of children is they have inherent wisdom. So I often think back to my childhood to think, what wisdom can I learn from my child self? I remember very clearly, actually, I was sick. I had a fever, I'm pretty sure. And that would explain why the following story happens. But I was just sitting in bed, and I saw tiny little gnomes jump in the window, and they slid down the curtain onto my dresser, and there were a group of them, and they were adorable. They were kind of like Smurfs, and they weren't blue. I don't remember what color they were. I don't remember the color. I just remember I knew that they were gnomes. And they just kind of came over to me, and they looked at me like I was some sort of work project that they had been assigned to. They jumped inside of me, and they began to do their healing work. So one thing that I imagined a lot with them was that they would have little snowball fights with these goopy white healing medicines, and whenever they missed they'd throw them around, and they'd land, and the landing would heal me, and they'd be having fun, and so it would be good all around. It wouldn't be a boring job for them. And so I started imagining the gnomes as an adult too. I was like, I'm going to pull that back into my life. I'm going to call the gnomes into me and just imagine gnomes healing my back. I just used as many techniques as I could think of just to entertain me, because I wasn't very good at sticking with the same thing all the time. And going back to Eckhart Tolle, it's really this inner game, of this mental game that's connected to our bodies. One thing that was very big for me as I examined my mind was that I realized, and I actually knew this when I was a teenager, but at the time I didn't apply it to my life. The knowing was that I didn't actually want to play sports. And that's how I got the injury in the first place. I had stress inside of me over not wanting to play. I was doing it for my dad because he wanted me to do it, and I wanted to make him happy. I should add that I do really love sports. It's just this focus on winning that was difficult for me when I was a teenager. And so I had this inner stress inside of me to start with, of I don't really want to be here. I'm doing this for someone else. And the injury was an opportunity for me to jump, to switch, but I completely chickened out. And and to recall that later in life really had an impact on me, because I realized the way your inner thoughts can create stress, and the stress can create an illness. Sometimes when something's hurt, when you get an injury, you feel like really let down by that part of your body. You feel like that part of your body betrayed you. And like there's some, you might have anger or like sadness or some emotion that you're feeling about that body part that you feel let you down. But really, your body is your ally. Your body wants to help you. It is our responsibility to step up and nurture this beautiful gift that we have that allows us to experience this earth reality. So moving into this gratitude helps us become kind of like friends with our bodies. It's a constant process, right? It's a constant growth process of self-love. You know, it did occur to me at some point that I just want to be very soothing, and people generally are just very nurturing and soothing towards animals, and that is really the mentality that we could take in to ourselves, which is really just about self-love. And that, for me, that idea kind of like stretched out into TV. And I loved the Muppets and the Muppet movies. And so Kermit and Miss Piggy were my favorite characters, and I realized I could take a Kermit test. Basically, it's a way to assess self-talk. So if you wouldn't say or think something negative about Kermit and his back, then you shouldn't direct that negativity towards yourself either. So it's kind of like a tool to help with self-compassion.
There's so many songs about rainbows.
So if you imagine your back as like a furry, adorable creature like a Muppet, or imagine your back as an adorable part of a Pixar animation, you wouldn't really treat your back badly, because it's like this cute, furry, adorable thing that you want to love and hug and take care of. And so whatever you have to do in your mind to be lovable, do it.
I love you.
I love you too.
Thanks.
Or
To summarize, what allowed me to relieve myself of chronic back pain, and I have not had the pain since that time, and I have not had a back flare-up of any large measure since that time, knock on wood. First, it was a declaration, a very strong declaration with an emotion that I am not going to have this back pain. I'm going to shift from this story of I am someone with back pain, and I'm going to move into a story that I am someone who is healthy and free of pain. And then gratitude. So gratitude for the experience of having a body, and then the self-love comes in, and pairing that with mental visualizations of strength. You might even personify the part of your body that is ailing you to make it extra lovable, which will help with healing. And then, of course, last is the Kermit test. I'd love to hear how you have healed chronic pain, or where you are at in your journey around that. Please share your story in the comment section. And if you feel that this was valuable for you in some way, please share it with your friends, or subscribe. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.